You think you know how far a secret can go in a place ruled by power, pride, and silence, until someone breaks the rules. It started like any other night at the precinct. The noise of boots, the smell of gun oil, the echo of laughter in the locker room after another long shift. But what happened behind those steel doors that night wasn't about duty. It was about something raw, forbidden, and real. Two officers, one too proud to admit what he felt, the other too afraid to believe it was mutual, caught in a moment that would change everything. And when the captain walked in and saw what we were doing, I thought my life was over. But what he did next, no one saw coming. If you've ever hidden a part of yourself just to survive, this story will hit deep. Stay until the end, because sometimes the bravest act isn't facing danger, but facing your own truth. The station was quieter at night, the kind of silence that settles after the last call, when the city finally exhales. I loved those hours. The hum of fluorescent lights, the faint smell of coffee and leather, the low buzz of radios still murmuring distant static. Most of the guys had already gone home, but I stayed behind to finish my report. I always stayed late, maybe because it was easier to breathe when no one was watching. That's when Ethan walked in. Officer Ethan Morales, tall, broad-shouldered, with that kind of easy confidence that turned heads wherever he went. He was the department's golden boy. Quick on his feet, charming, the kind of guy everyone liked instantly. Everyone except me, or at least that's what I told myself. Still here? He asked, tossing his duffel on the bench beside me. I didn't look up from my paperwork. Someone has to make sure your reports aren't full of spelling errors. He laughed, that low, warm laugh that carried through the empty locker room. You always this uptight, Collins? I shrugged. Only when I'm around people who can't follow protocol. He grinned and started unbuttoning his shirt, revealing the plain white t-shirt underneath. I told myself not to look, but my eyes betrayed me. His skin gleamed with sweat from the late-night run they'd just returned from. My throat went dry. Relax, he said, smirking as he caught my glance. It's just a shirt. I forced a chuckle and stood up, trying to escape before my pulse gave me away. Right, just a shirt. He turned back to his locker, pulling off his vest. You know, you should come on a night patrol with me sometime. Get out of the office for once. I'm fine where I am, I said, zipping up my bag. Yeah, I noticed. You're always fine. Always perfect. Always. He stopped mid-sentence and met my gaze in the mirror. Always hiding something. I froze. He said it casually, like a tease, but his eyes didn't match his tone. For a second, it felt like he saw right through me. Past the badge, the uniform, the walls I'd built. I grabbed my jacket and forced a laugh. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, he said softly, turning away. But I've been watching. I didn't answer. My stomach knotted as I walked toward the door, the sound of his voice following me like an echo. Night, Collins. Night, I said, not looking back. Outside, the hall was empty. The vending machine flickered, humming softly beside the notice board. I pressed my hand to the cool metal wall and took a deep breath. It was getting harder to pretend around him, harder to ignore how my pulse jumped every time he laughed, or how the air changed when we were alone. The next night, fate decided to play a cruel joke. Captain Donnelly announced that I'd be partnering with Morales for the weekend patrol. You two are both clean, efficient, and I need balance in the field, he said. Try not to kill each other, Ethan grinned. No promises, sir. I wanted to protest, but it was pointless. You don't argue with Captain Donnelly, not if you want to keep your job. Our first shift together was awkward at best. The silence in the squad car felt heavy, filled with things neither of us wanted to say. We drove through the dark streets, lights flickering over wet asphalt. Every so often he'd glance my way, smirking like he knew something I didn't. Around 2 a.m., after a routine stop, we headed back to the precinct. The rain had started to fall, a slow drizzle that blurred the city lights into streaks of silver. We parked, both too tired to talk. When we stepped into the locker room, the sound of rain on the roof was the only thing breaking the silence. Ethan peeled off his jacket and threw it on the bench. You really don't talk much, do you? I sighed, tossing my badge onto the counter. Not everyone needs to fill the air with noise. Maybe not, he said, stepping closer. But silence says a lot, too. I felt him before I saw him. The heat of his body, the faint smell of cologne and rain. My pulse quickened. He reached past me for his towel, his arm brushing mine. I tried to move, but I couldn't, he noticed. Of course he did, Collins, he said quietly. You okay? I swallowed hard. Yeah, just tired. He studied me for a long moment. You ever get tired of pretending? My heart stopped. What? He stepped closer, his voice low, careful. You think I don't see it? The way you avoid everyone. The way you flinch when the guys make jokes in the locker room. You don't have to lie to me. I turned to face him. You don't know what you're talking about. He smiled faintly, but there was something sad in his eyes. Maybe I do. The space between us shrank until I could feel his breath on my skin. The air felt charged, dangerous, like a wire pulled too tight. Ethan, I said, barely above a whisper. He looked at me, eyes searching mine. If I'm wrong, tell me to stop. But I didn't. He leaned in slowly, the world narrowing down to the sound of rain and the beat of my own heart. His lips brushed mine, tentative, uncertain, and I felt everything I'd buried for years come rushing back. Then, Morales. Collins! We froze. The locker room door swung open. Captain Donnelly stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. For a second, no one moved. The air turned to glass. My stomach dropped. Sir, I started, but my voice cracked. He raised a hand. Don't bother. Ethan stepped back, face pale. Captain, it's not... Save it, Donnelly said, his tone sharp but calm. Both of you. My office. Now. The door slammed behind him. Ethan and I stood there, hearts pounding, the taste of fear still fresh in my mouth. Whatever we were, whatever this was, it was no longer a secret. The walk to Captain Donnelly's office felt like the longest of my life. The sound of our boots on the linoleum floor echoed like gunshots. Neither Ethan nor I said a word. My palms were sweating, my throat dry, and every step felt heavier than the last. When we reached his door, the faint smell of coffee and cigarette smoke drifted out. Donnelly's light was still on. He was sitting behind his desk, arms crossed, face shadowed by the lamp. He didn't look angry, and that scared me more than if he'd been shouting. Close the door, he said quietly. Ethan did. The click of the latch sounded final, like a verdict. Sit. We obeyed. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Donnelly didn't speak for several seconds. He just stared at us, the silence pressing harder with each passing moment. Finally, he sighed and leaned back. I've been on the force 30 years. I've seen just about everything. Drugs, blood, betrayal, bad cops, good men who lost their way. But I never thought I'd walk into that. Sir, I began, but he raised a hand. Don't! I don't want excuses. He rubbed his temple. Do you have any idea what would happen if someone else had walked in before me? The gossip, the politics, the goddamn press. Ethan's voice broke the silence. It was my fault, sir. No, I interrupted. It wasn't. We both... Enough. Donnelly's voice cracked through the air. You think I care whose fault it was? I care about the department. About keeping this place from becoming a circus. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark parking lot below. You two are good cops. Morales, you've got natural instincts. Collins, you're precise and methodical. You make a damn good team. But this? He turned back to us. This could ruin both of you. Ethan clenched his fists. We didn't plan it, Captain. It just happened. Donnelly's gaze softened slightly, but his voice stayed firm. You think that matters? You know how this city works. One photo, one rumor, and internal affairs will be breathing down my neck. I felt a knot tightening in my chest. So what happens now? He stared at us for a moment, then exhaled slowly. For now, nothing leaves this room. You'll both take separate shifts for a while. No patrols together, no locker room overlap. I'll file it as operational rotation. Relief flickered through me, then dread. And after that? That depends, he said, on whether you can both act like professionals again. Ethan nodded quickly. Yes, sir. You have my word. I forced myself to say the same, though the words tasted like lies. Donnelly sat down again, rubbing his jaw. I'm not your enemy, boys. You think I don't know what it's like to live with something the world won't accept? The badge doesn't make you bulletproof. It just hides the target for a while." The room fell silent. His words hung heavy, more personal than expected. For a moment, I wondered if there was more to his reaction than professionalism, if he'd seen himself in us somehow. He cleared his throat. "Go home, cool off. Tomorrow you'll both act like this never happened. Understood?" "Yes, sir," we said in unison. When we left the office, the hallway felt colder. The lights buzzed faintly, the hum of the vending machine echoing down the corridor. We walked side by side toward the exit, but the distance between us had never felt greater. Outside, rain was still falling, soft now, more like a whisper. Ethan stopped near his car, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Define okay." He looked at me, eyes filled with something like guilt. "I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this." "Dragged?" I said sharply. "You think this was just your mistake?" "I kissed you back, Morales. I knew exactly what I was doing." He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. "You're not making this easier." "I'm not trying to," I said, my voice low. "I'm trying to be honest." He nodded slowly, the rain catching in his hair. "Then here's my truth. I haven't stopped thinking about it. About you." The words hit me like a shot. "Ethan." He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You think I don't know how dangerous this is? You think I haven't been fighting it since the first day I met you?" I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding. "So why tell me now?" "Because Donnelly was right," he said, eyes locked on mine. "This could ruin everything. But lying to myself would ruin me faster." Before I could respond, headlights flared across the parking lot. Another squad car pulled in, breaking the moment. We stepped back instinctively, the illusion of privacy shattered. "Go home," he said quietly. "We'll figure it out later." I wanted to argue, to ask him what later even meant. But he was already walking toward his car, rain misting around him like smoke. I stood there until his taillights disappeared into the dark. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. The look in his eyes when he said he couldn't keep lying, the tension between fear and desire that had been building for weeks. I kept replaying the moment Donnelly walked in, wondering if he'd saved us or doomed us both. The next morning at the precinct, everything looked the same, but nothing felt it. Donnelly passed me in the hallway and gave a curt nod, his expression unreadable. Ethan wasn't there. His locker was empty. A small slip of paper sat folded on the bench. It was a note. Just 3 words. "Meet me tonight." No address, no name, just a time. 11:30 p.m. My heart pounded as I tucked the note into my pocket. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to let things fade before we both lost everything. But when night came, I found myself driving across town anyway. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened under the streetlights. I parked where he'd said and saw him leaning against his car, hands shoved into his jacket, eyes shadowed with something between exhaustion and hope. "You came," he said softly. "Yeah," I replied. "Guess I'm not good at following orders." He smiled faintly. "Good, because what I'm about to do isn't exactly regulation either." Before I could ask what he meant, he reached out, took my hand, and pulled me closer. There were no words this time. No hesitation, no guilt, just the quiet surrender of 2 people who'd run out of ways to lie to themselves. But as I felt his heartbeat against mine, I couldn't shake the thought that secrets in our world never stayed buried for long, and somewhere deep down, I knew this one was about to explode. The next morning, everything at the precinct looked normal, but felt wrong. The coffee machine hissed, the phones rang, officers joked by the lockers, and yet there was a tension under it all. Or maybe it was just in my head. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls knew. That somehow the building itself had learned what happened between me and Ethan. He walked in late, still in his jacket, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. We didn't speak. We couldn't, not here. He nodded at me once, a silent acknowledgement, then went straight to his desk. But even that small gesture was too much. Late night. Officer Ramirez called out with a grin from across the room. "You look like you didn't sleep, Morales." Ethan smirked, trying to play it off. "Long drive home?" "Don't worry, I didn't dream about you." Laughter rippled through the room, and I forced a tight smile. But my pulse was hammering. The last thing we needed was attention. As the morning dragged on, I kept catching people glancing our way. Maybe I was paranoid, or maybe Donnelly's warning had settled deep in my bones. Either way, every laugh sounded like a whisper. Around noon, the captain called me into his office. My stomach dropped. He was sitting behind his desk, his glasses low on his nose, paperwork spread out in front of him. "Close the door, Collins," I obeyed, heart pounding. He didn't look up right away. "You've been quiet lately." "I'm fine, sir. That's what everyone says before they make a mistake." He looked up then, eyes sharp. "You and Morales haven't been seen together much." "That's good. Keep it that way." "Yes, sir," he leaned back, exhaling. "I meant what I said the other night. I'm not here to ruin careers, but I need to know you understand what's at stake. The department doesn't forgive easily." "I understand," I said, though my voice felt distant. He studied me for a long time, then nodded. "Good, go do your job. And Collins," his tone softened slightly, "don't make me regret protecting you." I left his office feeling like my chest had been hollowed out. Guilt, fear, anger, they all mixed into something that made it hard to breathe. When my shift ended, I found Ethan by the vending machine. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "You okay?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "Ramirez cornered me earlier. Asked why we don't ride together anymore. What did you say?" "That you're too serious for me," he said with a weak smile. He laughed. "But it didn't feel like a joke," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "They're going to find out, Ethan. You know that, right?" He looked at me, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Then what do we do? Pretend it never happened?" I hesitated. "Maybe we have to." His expression hardened. "You think I can just turn it off?" "I'm saying we have no choice," I whispered. "You said it yourself. This could destroy us." He stepped closer, his voice trembling but low. "You ever think maybe it's worth it? Worth losing everything?" He nodded. "If it means not living a lie." For a second, neither of us spoke. The hallway was empty, the hum of the lights buzzing above. Then the sound of footsteps echoed from the corner, and we sprang apart like guilty teenagers. It was Ramirez again, holding a file. He stopped, eyes narrowing slightly. "Everything good here?" "Yeah," Ethan said quickly. "Just talking shop." Ramirez looked between us, his grin fading into something more curious. "Right, shop." He handed me the file. "Captain wants this signed." When he walked away, I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan muttered under his breath. "He knows." "No, he doesn't," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. We didn't see each other for 2 days after that. The captain had assigned me to night shifts and Ethan to mornings. I told myself it was for the best, that the space would make things easier. But instead, it just made the silence louder. On the 3rd night, I was finishing paperwork when I heard the locker room door creak open. I turned, half expecting Donnelly. But it was Ethan. He looked around to make sure we were alone, then closed the door behind him. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I know," he said, walking closer. "But I couldn't stay away." The sound of his voice, the look in his eyes, it hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to push him away, to remind him of all the risks. But instead I whispered, "Someone could see us." "I don't care anymore," he said. "I'm tired of hiding." He stepped closer, the air between us tightening. His fingers brushed mine, tentative at first, then certain. And just like that, all the fear, the guilt, the restraint we'd held on to cracked open again. We kissed. Quick, quiet, desperate. The kind of kiss that happens when time itself becomes the enemy. Then, footsteps. We broke apart instantly. Ramirez's voice echoed from the hall. "Morales? That you?" Ethan's eyes widened. I grabbed my bag and whispered, "Go, now." He slipped out the back exit just as Ramirez walked in. His gaze swept the room, landing on me. "What are you still doing here?" "Finishing reports," I said, forcing calm. He raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I thought I heard Morales." "He left an hour ago." Ramirez studied me for a moment, then shrugged. "Huh, must have been the radio." But the look he gave me before leaving said otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ramirez's face, that flicker of suspicion. I knew how fast rumors spread, how whispers became poison. The fear of exposure was a constant hum under my skin. The next morning, Donnelly called for a department-wide briefing. My stomach churned as he entered the room, folder in hand. "Listen up," he said, scanning the room. "There's been talk, gossip. Some of you apparently think this station's locker room is a high school hallway. Let me be clear. If I hear one more rumor about anyone's personal life, I'll start handing out suspensions like candy." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. His eyes flicked just for a second toward me and Ethan. My heart stopped. After the meeting, Ethan approached me by the doorway, his voice low. "He knows something, or someone told him," I said. He clenched his jaw. "Then it's just a matter of time." We stood there, the hum of conversation around us fading into background noise. Whatever fragile world we'd built was collapsing, and deep down, I knew this wasn't the kind of secret that stayed buried forever. The whispers started small. A snicker by the coffee pot, a low voice that stopped when I entered the room. It took less than 48 hours for the rumor to infect every corner of the precinct. No one said it outright, but I could feel it in the stares that lingered too long, and in the way conversations died when I walked past. Ethan felt it too. I could tell by how he carried himself. Shoulders tighter, smile forced, eyes always scanning the room like we were surrounded by enemies. And in a way, we were. On Monday morning, we were assigned to separate cases again. Donnelly's doing, obviously. When I passed him in the hallway, he didn't even look at me. That silence from him was worse than a reprimand. It meant something was coming. By noon, it did. "Collins, Captain wants you," said Ramirez, dropping the words like a grenade. He smiled, too wide, too knowing. I walked to Donnelly's office, each step heavier than the last. He was standing at the window when I entered, hands clasped behind his back. Closed the door, my throat went dry. "Sir, if this is it's about control," he interrupted, turning around. "You lost it." I swallowed hard. "Sir, with all due respect, don't." His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "You think I don't hear what people are saying? You think I can protect you both when the whole department is gossiping about two of my officers sneaking around after hours?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "It's not like that." He raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it like?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He sighed. "I told you once, Collins, this place doesn't forgive easily. You either end this now, or I transfer one of you out of the precinct permanently." I froze. "Transfer?" "You heard me. I don't care who goes. But you can't both stay." I wanted to argue, to tell him he couldn't do that, but deep down I knew he could. The silence between us stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally he said, "Go home. Think about it. But if I don't get an answer by tomorrow, I'll make the decision for you." When I left his office, Ethan was waiting near the hallway. One look at my face and he knew. "It's bad, isn't it?" I nodded. "He's giving us a choice." "Let me guess," he said bitterly. "Either end it or get separated." "Yeah." He leaned against the wall, rubbing the back of his neck. "So that's it, huh? That's our punishment for not being what they want us to be. It's not fair," I said. "Since when has it ever been fair?" We stood there, just breathing. The air between us felt charged, a mix of fear and anger. He looked at me, eyes hard. "If one of us has to go, it'll be me." "Don't," I said quickly. "You're good at this job. You've worked for it. So have you," he shot back. "But you don't deserve to pay for my mistake." I shook my head. "It wasn't a mistake. That stopped him cold." "You mean that?" I nodded. Every second, something in his expression cracked, the anger fading into something softer, something that hurt even more. He took a step closer, then stopped himself. "Don't say that here." "Why not?" I whispered. "They already think it," he smiled sadly. "Because if I hear you say it out loud, I won't be able to walk away." He left before I could answer. The rest of the day blurred. Reports, phone calls, empty words. By the time the sun dipped behind the city skyline, my head was pounding. I sat at my desk long after everyone had gone home, staring at the file in front of me without reading a word. The precinct felt haunted, echoes of laughter, the faint smell of rain from someone's wet boots, the metallic click of the clock. I didn't hear Ethan come in until he spoke. Couldn't sleep either. I turned. He was standing by the door, still in uniform, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Then why are you?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because I'd regret not saying goodbye." My stomach twisted. "You're taking the transfer?" He nodded. "Captain said the paperwork will go through by morning." "No." I stood up. "We can fight this." "Donnelly, he's protecting us, Collins," he said gently. "This way, it doesn't go on record, it just disappears. Like we never existed." He stepped closer. "Maybe that's the only way we survive this." I wanted to hate him for saying it, but I couldn't. The sadness in his eyes said everything. This wasn't his choice any more than it was mine. "Where will they send you?" "Midtown Precinct," he said. "Different district. Different faces. Maybe that's for the best." The words hit like a punch. I turned away, gripping the edge of the desk. "After everything we went through? After everything you said?" He was quiet for a long time. Then softly, I meant every word. When I looked at him again, he was standing inches away. The tension that had been building for weeks broke like a dam. He reached for me, and this time I didn't pull away. We kissed, slower than before, deeper. The kind of kiss that tasted like goodbye. His hand trembled against my face, and I felt his breath hitch as he whispered, "You deserve better than this." "Better than me?" "Don't say that," I said. "Just stay." He smiled through the ache. "You know I can't." Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. The world felt suspended, as if holding its breath. He pulled back, eyes glistening. "Promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't let this make you bitter. Don't let them turn you into someone who hides again." I nodded, though my throat burned. "Only if you promise to come back." He hesitated, then said, "If the world ever lets me." The clock struck midnight. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, the city reminding us that time never stops, even when you want it to. He took one last look at me, then turned toward the door. "Goodbye, Collins." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words would have broken me. When the door closed, the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where he'd been, until the first light of dawn crept through the window. The city was waking up again, ready for another day. But for me, something had ended, and as I reached for my badge, still lying on the desk between our coffee cups, I realized the hardest part wasn't losing him. It was having to pretend I never had him in the first place. The precinct felt different after Ethan left. Quieter, emptier, like the heartbeat of the place had stopped. His locker was cleared out by the next morning. The name tag gone, the scent of his cologne faintly clinging to the metal. I stood there longer than I should have, hand resting on the cold door, waiting for something that wouldn't return. People noticed the change. They always do. The jokes stopped, the whispers softened. Not out of respect, but because they'd already found a new story to tell. By midweek, Ethan Morales was a ghost. Just another transfer. Just another cop who moved on. But I couldn't. Every patrol car felt too quiet without him. Every corner of the city reminded me of the nights we drove together. The way he tapped the steering wheel when he was lost in thought. The way his laughter filled the dark. I kept replaying the last thing he said to me. "Don't let them make you hide again." I tried not to. But in the days that followed, I started shrinking back into the version of myself I'd built before him. The careful, controlled man who said just enough to fit in and not enough to stand out. Then, one afternoon, Captain Donnelly called me into his office again. "Close the door," he said. Like always, I obeyed. He studied me for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. "You've been off your game lately." I swallowed. "Just adjusting, sir." "Adjusting," he repeated, his tone unreadable. "You know what that word means to me? It means you're not okay, but you're too stubborn to say it." I stared at the floor. "With respect, sir, it's not your concern." He raised an eyebrow. "Everything that affects my officers is my concern." I hesitated. "Is this about Morales?" "It's about both of you," he said flatly. Then after a pause, "Sit down, Collins. There's something you should know." I sat, heart pounding. Donnelly was rarely personal. He kept distance like a rulebook. But now there was something in his eyes, not the usual steel, but something gentler. "You think I don't understand what it's like?" he said quietly. Keeping secrets, pretending to be someone the job expects you to be. I frowned. Sir? He looked past me as if staring through the wall. 30 years ago, before you were even in uniform, there was another officer here. His name was Michael Shaw, best man I ever knew. He trained me, watched my back. We were partners. His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time since I'd known him, Captain Donnelly looked human. We got too close. People noticed. Back then, the department wasn't as forgiving as it is now, and it's still not forgiving at all. They didn't give me a choice. They transferred him. 2 months later, he took his own life. The words hit like a punch. Donnelly exhaled slowly, his gaze heavy but steady. That's why I didn't report you and Morales. Why I told you to keep your heads down. I've already buried one good man because of this job. I wasn't going to bury 2 more. I couldn't speak. My throat burned. Sir, I didn't know. You weren't supposed to, he said. But I'm telling you now so you understand something. The world won't hand you a fair fight. Not yet, but that doesn't mean you stop living. The room went quiet. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. After a long moment, I said, he didn't deserve that. Neither did you, Donnelly nodded. No one does. That's why I stayed. Someone had to change things from the inside. He leaned forward. So here's my advice, Collins. Don't disappear. You're a good cop. Don't let guilt turn you into a shadow. I left his office in a daze, the weight of his story settling deep in my chest. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about Donnelly, about Ethan, about how many lives had been broken by silence. The next morning, I did something reckless. I called Ethan. He didn't answer. I tried again, then sent a message. Need to talk, please. No reply. 2 days later, during my shift, I got a call from a Midtown precinct officer. You know Morales? My chest tightened. Yeah, why? He got into a scuffle during an arrest. He's fine, but he's been suspended for 72 hours, pending review. I didn't even think. I signed out early and drove across the city. Midtown was smaller, rougher. The air smelled like exhaust and bad coffee. I found him sitting on the steps outside, bruised cheek, cigarette between his fingers. He looked up when I approached. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, I said softly. He smirked without humor. Guess we're both bad at following orders. I sat beside him, the sound of traffic filling the silence. You okay? I've been worse, he said. Guy pulled a knife during a domestic call. I disarmed him, but my report didn't match the witnesses. IA's sniffing around. I studied him, the dark circles, the exhaustion, the faint tremor in his hands. You're burning out, he shrugged. Comes with the job. No, I said. Comes with running from who you are. He went still. Don't start, Collins. I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing what we didn't get to say. He turned to me, eyes hard. Say it then. You don't have to keep punishing yourself, I said quietly. You didn't do anything wrong, he laughed bitterly. Tell that to the world. I did, I said. I told Donnelly. He knows everything, Ethan froze. You told him? He already knew, I said. And he told me something else, something you should hear. I told him about Michael Shaw, about the transfer, the suicide, the guilt Donnelly carried. When I finished, Ethan's face had softened. He looked away, blinking fast. He protected us, I said. He gave us a chance to walk away alive. But I can't live like this anymore, pretending we don't exist. Ethan's jaw tightened. You really think we can make it work? Out there? Like this? I don't know, I said honestly. But I know hiding isn't living. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally he stubbed out his cigarette and stood. You always were the brave one. I rose too. No, you just made me want to be, he smiled. Small, tired, real. Then what now? Now, I said, we stop letting them decide what we deserve. He nodded slowly. Then I guess it's time I stop running. The city buzzed around us. Horns, sirens, life moving on. But for the first time, it didn't feel like the world was closing in. It felt like it was opening. He extended his hand. I took it. Just a simple gesture. Nothing more, nothing less. But in that moment, under the gray New York sky, it felt like defiance. Maybe love didn't have to be loud to be brave. Sometimes surviving was rebellion enough. It had been 3 weeks since I'd seen Ethan at the Midtown precinct. 3 long, uneven weeks where the city felt louder, crueler, and the badge heavier on my chest. I worked my shifts, filed my reports, and went home to an apartment that never felt darker. The nights were the worst, quiet, except for the hum of the street outside and the echoes of everything I hadn't said. Then, one Friday morning, an internal memo circulated through the department. A promotion list. I scanned it without caring until I saw the name near the top. Sergeant Ethan Morales, Midtown Division. I stared at the screen for a full minute. A part of me felt proud. Another part felt betrayed. He was moving forward while I was still standing in the ruins of what we'd been. But that night, as I was leaving, I found Captain Donnelly standing by the bulletin board, the memo in his hand. "You saw?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, he studied me carefully." "You planning to congratulate him?" I hesitated. "Would that be wise?" He sighed. "Maybe not. But it might be right. I didn't sleep that night." The words looped through my head until they forced me into action. The next morning I drove across town again. Midtown was busier than usual. A traffic accident had half the block closed off. I spotted Ethan standing near his car, directing pedestrians away from the wreck. His uniform looked freshly pressed, his expression steady, controlled, every inch the officer he'd fought to be. When he saw me, surprise flickered in his eyes, followed by something softer. "Collins," he said, walking over. "You shouldn't be here. Story of my life," I said. He smiled faintly. "You came all this way just to say that?" I shook my head. "I came to say congratulations." "Sergeant Morales." "Sounds good. Feels strange," he admitted. "Haven't decided if it's a reward or a sentence yet." I looked around, lowering my voice. "We need to talk." He hesitated, then nodded toward the diner across the street. 10 minutes. Inside, the diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried eggs. We slid into a booth near the back, both pretending the space between us wasn't vibrating with everything we weren't saying. "So," he began, "what's this about?" "I can't do it anymore," I said quietly. The pretending, the silence. Donnelly told me what happened to his partner. "I won't let us become another secret that ends in tragedy." He leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You think I haven't thought about that? Every damn day?" "Then stop thinking and do something." His hands tightened around his coffee cup. "You have no idea what you're asking. You want me to stand up in front of every cop I've ever worked with and tell them I broke their unspoken rule?" "Yes," I said. "Because someone has to." He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "You still believe in changing the world, don't you?" "Not the world," I said. "Just ours." The silence stretched. He stared at the table, his thumb tracing the rim of the cup. "You know what will happen if we do this? The rumors will come back. I will dig. The brass will find a reason to move one of us again. Maybe," I said. "But maybe someone will see us and realize they're not alone." That hit him. I saw it in the way his jaw loosened, his breath caught. "You always were stubborn," he muttered. "And you always liked that about me." He looked up, meeting my gaze for the first time. The walls between us trembled again, just like they had that first night in the locker room. "You're serious?" he asked. "Dead serious." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Then we do it on our terms, together." I nodded. "Together." We met Donnelly the next day. He listened silently as we told him what we planned. A formal complaint to the department's HR about the persistent rumors, the prejudice, the fear of being outed. We weren't asking for an apology. We were demanding a conversation. When we finished, he rubbed his face and muttered, "You're either the bravest or the dumbest pair of men I've ever met." "Probably both," Ethan said with a half smile. Donnelly sighed, then stood. "If you're doing this, you're not doing it alone. I'll back you quietly, but understand something, boys. The world doesn't change overnight. And sometimes it changes by breaking the people brave enough to try, then let it break us," I said. "At least it'll mean something." He nodded, eyes proud but pained. "Sure would have liked you too." Words spread faster than we expected. By Monday morning, the memo had leaked. Officers whispered in hallways, heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence when we walked in. The captain called a briefing to calm the tension. But the message was clear. The old walls were cracking. The following week, The precinct held a mandatory ethics seminar, their polite way of saying damage control. Half the room ignored it, but a few listened. That was enough. When it ended, Ethan and I walked out together. For the first time, we didn't hide. No whispered words, no avoiding glances. Just two men walking side by side, the sun glinting off our badges. That afternoon, Donnelly called us both into his office. He looked exhausted, but there was something proud in his eyes. "You made a mess," he said, smirking faintly. "Sorry, sir," Ethan said. He waved it off. "Don't be. The right kind of mess forces people to think. Keep doing your jobs. That's how you win, by being too damn good to ignore." We nodded, both of us trying to hide the relief that washed through us. As we turned to leave, he added, "And Collins." "You were right. It was time." Outside, the sun was setting, painting the city in gold and smoke. Ethan leaned against the railing, watching the sky. "Feels strange," he said. "Like the air's lighter." "It is," I said. "That's what honesty feels like." He turned to me, his expression softer than I'd seen in months. "You know this isn't the end, right? There'll be fallout. People will talk. Some will never look at us the same way." I smiled faintly. "Then we give them something worth looking at," he chuckled. "You really don't know when to quit?" "Guess not." We stood there in silence for a while, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. The world kept moving, cars honking, sirens wailing, life unfolding as if nothing had changed. But for us, everything had. He reached out, his hand brushing mine, a small, quiet touch that meant more than words ever could. "So what now?" he asked. I looked at him, then at the city beyond. "Now we live." Out loud, he smiled, and for the first time in a long time it wasn't guarded. It was real. And standing there beside him, I realized something Captain Donnelly had tried to teach us all along, that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to be seen despite it. We'd both worn uniforms built to hide who we were. But now, for the first time, they felt like armor for something else, not against bullets or violence, but against shame. That night, when we walked out of the precinct together, there were still whispers. There would always be whispers. But there was also silence, the kind that comes when respect replaces curiosity. Ethan glanced at me as we reached the parking lot. "You think it gets easier from here?" I smiled. "No, but maybe it gets truer." He laughed softly. "Then that's enough." We stood by his car, the city glowing behind us, the smell of rain in the air. For a long moment we just breathed, two men finally unafraid to take up space in a world that had told them not to. And as he started the engine, the radio crackled to life with a call. Another case, another night, another reason to keep going. He looked at me, a half-smile playing on his lips. "You ready, partner?" I nodded. "Always." He shifted the car into gear, headlights cutting through the dark. For the first time, the road ahead didn't look like something to survive. It looked like something to claim, and as the city opened before us, I knew the story wasn't ending. It was just finally being lived. Sometimes love doesn't ask for permission. It demands courage, the kind that changes hearts before it changes rules. Collins and Ethan's story isn't just about breaking silence. It's about reminding us that no one should have to hide to be whole. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might just be the one that changes you too.